Hi, welcome to an edition of Inside Ortonville. My name is Greg Norman. We're lucky enough to have with us Oakland County Lieutenant Greg Glover, and Greg and I are going to talk a little bit about guns and triggers and a variety of things. And the county, Oakland County, has been pushing very hard on a program to put in place, a safety program, to put in place gun locks. Maybe you can explain a little bit about what the county's doing.
It's a program that where the sheriff department, the sheriff has teamed up with the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, and the program is actually called www.lockitupoakland.com. That's the website, and it is for gun safety locks for homeowners.
And obviously, this is something you guys do annually. Am I correct?
We do it. We have done it annually.
You seem to be pushing it harder this year, and I say it from a public relations standpoint. Is there?
I personally have not seen that it's being pushed harder. It's something that the sheriff truly believes in for gun safety, and it's something that we do every year. June is gun safety month for the awareness for the gun safety, and the sheriff promotes it at that time.
If I could just grab this for a second.
Yep.
This is the lock.
Yes.
It works. Maybe you can explain just basically how it works.
Sure.
Without taking it out. I can take it.
This is a lock that you have to access with a key. The cord comes out of it, and you can put this through the cylinder, through a slide, through a bolt, those type of things, so that the gun, it basically renders it inoperable until you remove it.
And then Dad or Mom takes the key, puts it away from kids, which is one of the issues you were talking about earlier.
Correct.
Kids get a hold of things and they think they're play toys, and obviously they're not.
Yes.
This works with a pistol only? Works with?
It'll work with pistols, rifles, shotguns. I have never seen a weapon that it won't work on. It literally goes through the bolt and through the trigger mechanism, and it allows, it doesn't allow the gun to function properly until it's removed.
This is free, should point out. So
yes.
If I wanted one of these, what's the procedure?
These are compliments of the sheriff department, Sheriff Michael Bouchard. He sends these boxes out to all of our substations, and anybody can come to one of our substations, and we will hand them as many as they need. Are you happy with the numbers you've given out at this point? Surprisingly, at our substation, we don't go through a lot of them here in Brandon. Some of our other substations are large areas that they seem to go through more of them. We go through roughly a box probably every 2 years, but it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes we go through many of them in a week, and other times we don't give any of them away.
Curious, has anybody come back and said, by the way, thank you, that it did prevent an issue?
I have not had that, no.
I would think that would be something that it would make some sense.
Yeah, I have not had
training wheels for a car or for a bike.
Kind of, yes. Part of the problem today is that there are so many gun owners today, especially when it comes to handguns, that there's not a lot of proper storage. A lot of people don't have safes that are locking safes. These guns are often left out, in the open, easily accessible to kids and other people, and they're not properly handled, stored. And these locks, if you don't have a proper safe, does allow the gun to be rendered inoperable. So it is a huge safety feature.
I asked the question because there's more than just putting a lock on. This is the safety. It's learning the process.
Correct.
We were interested in it. In doing some research for this, I found out that the average NRA guy, and I'm just saying because that's the gun advocates, owns 6.5 guns on average, which is, and he says statistically there's plenty of them that own multiple numbers of guns.
Sure.
And they might be hunters, they might be in a rural area like this. But what I found interesting is that less than 10% of their base is taking a safety course, which is really kind of interesting.
That is interesting. And most people, it's with most gun owners, you have your avid target shooters and your avid hunters that are very familiar with guns, but most of the people, especially involved in the CPLs and things like that, a lot of them, and a lot of it is women that never grew up around guns, don't take a class or regularly use that firearm outside of the class that they had to take to obtain it. And that's where we start running into problems.
I guess this is a personal question, but should you have to take a class to own a gun?
I think for a handgun, I believe you should have to take some type of a safety class for any type of weapon, but especially a handgun.
Yeah. Well, what we want to do right now is we want to run the commercial that the county has given us and they're using as a promotional piece.
Okay.
And we're going to do that right now. We'll be back in about 35 seconds.
Okay.
We all assume that gun owners have a knowledge about gun safety, but that's not always the case. There are simple precautions that gun owners can take to make sure that their firearms don't pose a danger for our community. Proper firearm storage is the #1 way to prevent tragic accidents. Use a gun lock or store your firearms in a locked safe. Gun safes are available at local retailers. Free gun locks are available at your police department. Through responsible storage, we can do our part to invest in safety. Lock it up, Oakland. Safe storage saves lives.
Obviously, that was a pretty interesting commercial. They're serious about guns. What I found interesting about it was it's straight ahead.
Yes.
If you have a gun, protect your children, protect the area, take care of it. Put a lock in, and it's free.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense for me not to come get it.
Correct.
And you just, I think, said earlier, you get as many as you want, within reason, from that standpoint. The question, I guess, in my head is, we're living in a relatively rural area. Is it different in a rural area than suburban or maybe an urban area?
I
know the policy is that you treat everybody the same. I get that.
Correct. I mean, from a law enforcement perspective, and the way that with the amount of CPLs that are out there today, we treat everybody as though they're armed on traffic stops, and in any situation when we go to a home today, because in a rural area, it's typically been long guns and shotguns. People that own rifles and shotguns, hunters, those type of things. But today, because of the CPL laws and whatnot, more and more people have armed themselves with handguns. So it does present a little bit of a different avenue. I don't think from a law enforcement perspective we treat it any differently. Out here on like my midnight guys working the road on midnights, anytime you approach a car, you have to assume today that there's a weapon in that car. Often we will stop drunks at night that never tell you that they have a gun in the car because they're not thinking that way, when they are actually supposed to identify themselves as a CPL holder the minute you approach the car. And quite often it doesn't happen. And then
CPL is?
Concealed pistols license. Okay. And then they're actually in direct violation, but of that permit by not telling the officer that, hey, I'm a CPL holder, I have a weapon in the car. So that it is starting to cause us some concerns.
Taking a side step, if I'm stopped and I have a license to conceal, when your officer comes up to the window, I want my hands in a position where they can be seen, and I'm assuming will announce that information right off the bat?
Yes. You're supposed to actually announce it right off the bat that you are a CPL holder and you do have a weapon that's present in the vehicle.
Listen to the officer.
Yes.
Follow the rules.
Follow the directions. Yes.
And it is what it is from that standpoint.
Yes.
So I get that.
In a suburban setting, you're probably dealing, and I'll talk like specifically like Pontiac, for instance. You're dealing with more handguns than you are anything, often on a daily basis. Most of those weapons quite often are not registered to the actual owner. Quite often they're stolen handguns, those type of things. So there's a little bit of a different policing, but from a law enforcement perspective for us, we treat it the same across the board. We have to.
I asked the question because statistically we're more armed in Ortonville, Brandon Township, than we might be in some urban and suburban areas.
That's true.
Statistically.
That's true.
And again, I'm going back to the farms and hunters and things of that nature.
Sure.
I know of several guys in this area that own multiple guns, and they're sport shooters and those kinds of things, which just goes back to a safety question. And the other part of that safety question with locks, I know there's been some discussion with even something as simple as target practice. Guy puts up a coffee can and wonders why he shoots a .22 at it with nothing. There's no backstop.
Yes. Well, I mean, for an example, we've had a couple township meetings to where backstops and times that you should be allowed to target shoot and those type of things have been some of the most heated topics that have come up in the township. And with a couple of those township meetings, the place was a packed house. And they are local township residents that are strong gun right activist type people that believe in that stuff, but at the same time don't really want to see any types of restrictions put on them as far as when they can shoot, those type of things. And what we're having problems with are, with the most time is with proper backstops. We have a group of people out here that don't want to be told that they need proper backstops, and what is considered a proper backstop for shooting. And my idea of a proper backstop is something that is a large dirt pile, that there's no possible way that the round is going to get through it or around it if you happen to miss your target. And as of lately, we've been ticketing people for careless discharge of firearms because they think a 5-gallon bucket is a proper backstop, and it's not. Recently we had one involved in a 22 caliber rifle, which is, that bullet can travel up to a mile, and there was not a proper backstop. He literally was shooting into a 5-gallon bucket, and we wrote in the ticket for it. I mean, you have to know where. As a gun owner, you have heavy responsibilities for safety, and you have to know what your backstop is.
What's the ordinances for? Is there shooting ordinances within the township?
There is nothing as far as everything has adopted the actual DNR rules. There was an attempt to push an ordinance for proper backstops and the possibility of certain times that you can target shoot. That was not passed. That was there was some strong voice against that. So we decided to go back down to follow what the state law is, and we have the right to write careless discharge of a firearm ticket, which is a misdemeanor, and that's how we're handling it.
I might want to sound naive here, and I might want to sound stupid, but why would somebody have a problem with putting a proper backstop in place? Is it the issue, the laziness, the process? I'm not trying to think for somebody else. That doesn't make sense to me.
I think it's more of the laziness and people not having any clue or any idea of how far that bullet can travel and the damage that can be done if the round hits an improper target.
You can kill somebody with a 22.
There's probably more people killed with a 22 than any other weapon in this country.
So proper backstops obviously makes
a big deal.
If I want to know about that, I can call the sheriff's department, I can call you guys and say, hey, listen, I want to do some target practice. I've got 10 acres.
Yes.
Give me a suggestion. That type of
Sure.
thing.
And would be more than happy to answer those questions. I mean, if somebody has a question as to what they think is a proper backstop and what we believe, we're more than happy to come out and look at it. We would rather come out and look at it and give you some suggestions than to have an accidental.
I want to talk a little bit about gun safety on the way back, and we'll be back in about 30 seconds. Welcome back to Inside OTOM. My name is Greg Norman. We're with Oakland County Lieutenant Sheriff Greg Glover. We're talking a little bit about safety and gun locks that are given away free from the county, which is making a simple phone call to. You guys have a phone number that we can call in order to get that? Or just show up at the...
You can show up at the substation or call our local substation number, which is 627-4911.
Okay.
Or 4912.
Okay.
And we'll hand you.
There's this, as you just pointed out off camera, there's sort of been this impetus over the last 10 years of watching city people come out to the rural areas kinds of things. And a lot of times they get involved in guns. If I'm looking to do gun safety, what's my, I see when I walk into Walmart and Kmart, and I don't, unfortunately, never been into a gun shop, but like safes, what is the best way to store guns?
In my personal opinion, the best way to store a gun, it would be a locking safe.
Not in your sock drawer.
No, absolutely not. There's something that is to where the gun can be locked away from any access whatsoever, especially kids. And if you don't have a safe or don't have a means to have some type of a safe, obviously a locking mechanism that renders the gun inoperable.
What hits me though is a lot of folks are buying pistols for protection. If everything's locked away and Mr. Robber comes in the house, what do I do if I'm home with my pistol? What do I do in that situation?
That's one of the biggest concerns, because I mean, if you have a weapon, the idea of a weapon is for home protection, and it's very difficult to access that weapon and render it operable to defend yourself, which I would venture to say is the reason why most people do not want to lock or do not put a gun away in a safe. They think that they hide it in an area that's safe, and often it isn't a safe place, because that's how the accidents happen and kids find these guns.
I think if you were to look at statistics, the statistics of somebody without training or somebody who's not involved in firearms as a career, as a policeman might, having to shoot somebody, they've done all those studies, and it's unbelievable the number of folks that can't pull the trigger. They buy the protection, they buy the weapon for protection. Then when it comes to that point of where they've got to protect themselves, they don't have the heart when somebody's coming at them with a weapon.
Correct.
And that's a lot higher percentage than people would think.
But there's a big difference of when you go to the range or you're target shooting, and now you're put into a high stress situation that you have to make a split second decision. That often is a life or death situation. And the other part of that is that most people, once they obtain these weapons, they don't seek outside safety classes, and they don't follow up with regular use of that weapon to where they're proficient in it.
I think of the one scene from Samurai, not that we're talking about it, but Tom Cruise is training the troops. He's telling them they're not ready, and then he tells the guy to shoot him, and the guy shoots, and it's every placement where it's supposed to be, which is probably more accurate than people who think they're going to get down on one knee and be Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Absolutely.
From that perspective. So safes are the best place.
Safes definitely would be my number one choice. And then second of all would be some type of a lock on it, such as the one that the Sheriff's Department offers.
Never loaded. Can you keep a clip and a gun separately?
Sure. Yes.
Does that make sense?
I never recommend to ever be kept in the chamber for home use. Can you keep a loaded clip separate from that gun, absolutely. The problem is that not everybody has an automatic. People have revolvers and those type of things, and so to where the gun is loaded all the time.
And if you're going to do something, if somebody's inside your house, make sure he's inside your house when you're done.
Make sure he's inside the house, and make sure you've identified what that target is. I mean, we've had accidental shootings where a homeowner, a son, daughter, somebody has come home in the middle of the night, startled them, and we've had fatal shootings in those situations.
We don't have a lot of gun-related crime in this area, do we?
Very rarely. I mean, we do have it. Break-ins, where we've had stolen firearms, which is another issue of why to have a safe, so that they're not accessible to people that are looking to steal weapons. We do have our share of home invasions where weapons have been stolen, primarily handguns, but we're not in an area where that's an everyday issue.
I just find it interesting that folks aren't more interested in the safety aspect of things. It just from a common sense standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
Well, and one of the big issues of why the sheriff's department's pushing these locks is because not everybody has a means of purchasing a safe, and it's the sheriff's department's pushing these locks because of the suicide prevention probably being number one, and number two of having just an accidental tragic accident that could be life altering.
What time do you start kids? Do you give those kinds of thoughts? When you start
personally,
yeah.
I mean, I grew up, as old as 9-10 years old. My dad started, bringing me around guns. I mean, I grew up in a law enforcement family, so I was around guns anyway. But we were also hunters. I started shooting and becoming familiar with a gun as old as I was, old enough to handle it. I recommend personally that you familiarize your kids with those guns. If you have guns in the house, kids are curious. Kids are going to be kids, and if they're not familiar with it, that often is when accidents happen.
You mentioned also things like video games, desensitizing younger folks,
absolutely,
especially the smaller kids,
yes,
under 12.
Yes.
And that has to play a part if you've got a loaded weapon sitting at home. They think it's a play toy.
That is the case, and you need to know what type of games your kids are playing. These games today are all shoot 'em up games. They're shooting at the police, they're shooting at robbers. It totally desensitizes what that round can actually do. Kids become stagnant to it. They're totally desensitized by it, and that's when they start picking up weapons and pointing them at each other, having no idea what that actually can happen.
Adrenaline changes the process.
Absolutely.
And at that point, in your training as a police officer, are you trained to deal with that adrenaline? Is that part of the training?
Yes, we have to qualify once a month with our duty weapons, and that's whether it's our sidearm, whether it's an AR-15, or whether it's a shotgun. Whatever weapons we carry, we have to qualify with, and it's a monthly training. But we also go through simunition training where it's all high stress situations, where you're being shot at, you're entering into rooms knowing what the situation is, such as an active shooter in a school. So we're trained for higher stress situations.
I say that versus a sister-in-law who recently purchased a handgun for protection,
Yep.
and she goes into some pretty interesting areas. And I was just a little taken back because there was no training. She went initially for an hour or something.
Yes.
And I can't imagine in a stressful situation, this person, gets stressed going,
Well, I mean,
taking a walk.
No, I mean, even in the law enforcement world, I mean, most officers never fire a round at a bad guy, an assailant. And in those situations, they're a very high stress situation, and it's a situation where you're often making a split second life or death situation. And often the officers fire more rounds than they had. You might have fired 8 or 9 rounds when they literally think they fired 1 or 2.
Where do you keep your guns at home?
I keep mine in a lock safe.
Okay. How many people have that combination? Probably you and your wife.
Myself and my wife.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you come home, they go away, it's their lives,
Yes.
which makes perfect
Yes.
sense. The other, which has nothing to do with this, I just found it interesting in the New York Times yesterday that gun sales since President Trump has taken office have dropped 40%, which I thought was which helps to some extent from that perspective.
Sure.
It goes back to, we still have a pretty high percentage of stolen guns, those kinds of things.
Well, the percentage of stolen guns is off the charts. I mean, you know, the state has come up with, you know, such as the Brady bill, those type of things, and in my opinion, it takes the guns away from the lawful owner that is somebody that's qualified to own that gun. It doesn't put a dent in the population of bad guys who often are using stolen guns.
As we talk about safety, and we're about to wrap this up, I keep thinking that safety has no issue with rights. You know, you're maybe the only rights you're violating is somebody else's.
Right.
You know, okay. So, which I guess is my last question. I'm living someplace in the township, and I hear guns, and some guy's shooting at a bucket, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And he's just my neighbor. And I'm not real sure that I want my grandchildren running in the backyard with this guy shooting at 22. Sure. What would be my recourse? To call you guys?
To call the sheriff's department, call our dispatch, and we will send a car out. It happens weekly now. And I mean, if you have a situation where you hear constant gunfire and you're not comfortable with it, or you have a neighbor that's out shooting in the backyard and you don't believe they have a proper backstop, call us and we'll take a look at it.
Wouldn't it make sense to have some sort of standard for a backstop? Wouldn't that solve most of the problems? I'm talking about for target shooting.
For target shooting, yes. I mean, I think you should have to have some form of a proper backstop.
The $5 bucket's not it.
No, a 5-gallon bucket, or we've also run into where we've had somebody that has had a very good backstop, let's say a dirt or gravel berm, and they've decided to put their targets on top of the berm to shoot the cans, and we've had homes shot up because they're shooting over the top of the berm at the cans. So it's common sense.
Right.
You know, you have to know where that round, you are responsible for where that projectile is going.
I think the term drive-by maybe in the city comes back to the rural area from the standpoint that we see stories every week where somebody's innocently standing someplace and gets hit by gunfire.
Correct.
And a lot of it's fixed by a lock.
Yes.
I know I sound like innocent, but it's just so simple.
It is simple.
And we're arguing over simplicity.
Yes, it's common sense and safety, and what comes with owning a firearm is proper safety and being responsible for that weapon. First and foremost, you are responsible for that weapon at all times, and you're responsible for where that projectile goes.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the information, and hopefully this is informative to kind of get your view of some things. If you're looking for a lock, you can certainly get down to the Oakland County Sheriff's Substation here in downtown Ortonville, and they're right on the corner, so It's not hard to find.
Absolutely.
And we'll put that information up on the website, so we go with this. For Greg?
Yes.
For Greg, we appreciate the guys in the back as well, so we'll see you next time on Inside O-Town.
When I was walking home from school, they asked me for my money. I said no.
And all my friends ran home because they were scared he might punch them too.
I was screaming, but he just wouldn't stop.
He always said he would hit me. I just didn't think he actually would.
I don't know what I did, but they just kept on kicking me.
They tied me up and dragged me outside. They stripped me of my dignity.
She said she was going to teach me a lesson.
He said I wasn't listening. I didn't think he'd get so mad.
Oliver James. Right. Welcome to my country, my friends. I have right. Really? What do you think you are? I have right. I have right! Only rights you have here. Not rights I give you. Ready? 1, 2, Спаси muito. Ô, mano, embaixo.
Mental health disorders are serious and treatable conditions. Isolation, loneliness, and changes in behavior could be signs that someone you know is suffering from depression. Learn how to recognize when family or friends are in crisis and what you can do to help. Mental health does matter. Contact the Resource and Crisis Helpline with your concerns at 1-800-231-1127.
Talking with Heidi McVeigh, who is the new owner of the Skeleton Key, with the grand opening coming up August
4th, 5th, and 6th.
First of all, welcome to town.
Thanks.
And talk a little bit about what the Skeleton Key is.
It is a vintage, repurposed art. It's just an outlet for all kinds of different talents to, I don't know, show you, express all the different talents that everyone has. Everyone has their own talents. So I just wanted a place for everyone to be known, express it.
Now you had a bit of an opening July 1st,
yes.
And you're kind of under the radar for the moment.
Right.
And you're kind of in line with some other shops, South Street Consignment, For the Love of Local, and you're kind of in the middle.
Yes.
And you're kind of becoming repurposed row.
Yes.
For lack of a better term.
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
We're really cool ladies, and everyone, Brenda is awesome. She's got the same kind of vision that I had. So when I met her, it just felt like home, like it just worked. And Kathy's awesome too, so.
We'll start with maybe how you ended up in Ortonville, from being from Clarkston.
It was just a freak thing. I came to buy something from Rosemary, who owns the property, and then she just said, and I was looking for, I had to rethink my whole career. I was like, had to get a new job and figure out what the heck to do with my life. So I just kind of happened.
Now you were mentioning you were a postal worker, and
yep.
you kind of, from physical issues.
Yeah, my knees just
And you said your daughters were kind of involved in some of this kind of repurposing and
yes,
making new things look old and some
yep.
of those kinds of things. And kind of the Skeleton Key, where does the name come from?
The name is, for me, like a skeleton key opens a door to old houses, and each door has something hidden inside. So I was just thinking in that way, because like I said, we have sandblasting, we have oils, purses, furniture. We have pretty much everything. So that's the way I was thinking, just a door that will open to each thing, because everyone's creative, like a creative mind type thing.
And repurposing is kind of a trendy process at the moment. Is that
yes, it's pretty
fairly
popular.
accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Why? I'm just curious.
I think a lot of people don't want to have just the boring old typical stuff in their house. They want a story. They want something unique that's totally different. And I think a lot of people just want that now. They want character.
We used to throw out old used stuff.
Yes.
Now we repurpose it, which
yes.
is probably not a bad thing.
I think it's great.
Now you're talking a little bit about having a studio here and teaching people how to do some things. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have art classes, different painting techniques, teaching people how to make certain kinds of paint, which is chalk paint, and fluid painting, which is new.
Okay, explain chalk painting.
Chalk painting is basically that's like a chalk chemical that you mix into your paint, and that way you don't have to sand or do anything to the piece. It makes it easier for the painter.
Okay.
And you can paint it, and you can scuff it up, and you can put a wax over it, and there's many options you can do with it. It's just a nice painting.
Do you have an art background? Or is this hobby background?
I was going to be an art. That's what I wanted to do when I graduated, but you know how life goes. You just kind of go into whatever happens. And so I never did pursue it till now.
So
But I've always done like projects for my family. We are the ones who make things for every year for our family. You know, I'm into photography. So it was just hobby.
So this is passion.
Yes, a lot of passion.
Postal Service maybe wasn't so passionate, it was a job.
It was a hard job, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have such respect for postal workers because it's a very tough job.
Now you're here
Yeah, I'm here.
and about to have a huge grand opening.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about, I know you talked about some vendors and you're going to have quite an ordeal on the
Yes.
4th, 5th, and 6th.
We're having our ribbon cutting on the 4th at 10 a.m. and then we're gonna spin it right off into this whole property next door, which is Kathy South Street Consignment, is letting us use this, and we're gonna have like, I don't know, every kind of thing you can imagine. We're gonna have furniture out there, artists, baked goods. I mean, I don't know, it's a lot. And we're also having someone from Cowgirl Dreams Company in Trenton. She does a pop-up trailer boutique that she's going to be coming and parking by Brenda's. So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Cowgirl
Dreams Company.
And they sell?
They're out at Trenton. They sell like boho cowgirl shirts and just all different kinds of things like burlap.
Cowgirls and cowboys don't wear the same, I'm assuming.
No.
Okay.
And she just has a great positive message, which that's what I'm all about, is being positive and happy and doing what you love to do. So that's what I'm all about.
Is this new venture make your heart happy?
Yes.
Because
very
it's
much.
not what you were doing,
No.
to say the least.
No.
Talk a little bit about your family.
I have a great family. I have 3 daughters. My oldest, which started this, we started paying for her college. She's actually going to medical school to be an anesthesiologist. My middle child is an amazing artist. And then my younger one is going to be a doctor as well. Because of all my injuries, they've seen all the suffering and pain I've been through. It kind of steered in that direction to help people, which is a good thing. All of my troubles, like a good thing came out of it. That's what I look at.
So just the 3 of you?
Yeah. My
Okay.
husband helps too. He's a retired carpenter. He does another whole trade now.
Okay. And home is?
Home is in Clarkston.
Clarkston.
Yes.
And so that's where your kids went to school?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, cool. Is there anything else I should know about your facility?
Just that it's a lot of fun and want everyone to.
Do you have a website?
We just have a Facebook page.
Okay.
Yep,
The Facebook
and
page for the Skeleton Key. Is there a
Yes.
phone number? Let me start with hours.
Hours are Tuesday through Friday, 11 to 6, and Saturday, 10 to 4. Sundays are appointment only, and Mondays are closed because everyone else is closed. So I kind of got to go with,
Flow.
yeah, the flow.
And a phone number.
248-882-1641.
And we'll put that up someplace where everybody can see it. Is there anything I've missed?
I think so.
Okay. Well, best of luck, and we'll be here for the grand opening. We appreciate your
Awesome.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.